Hi all, today on the show we got a legend in the space of enterprise excellence within health. It is really important when you consider the challenges that our health industry is facing now with funding, resourcing and staff, the workload coming up with the baby boomers and the aging population, like it's a big gig. So learning from Mr. Skip Steward is going to be a key thing. The other aspect is Skip's kindly given us a copy of the Baptist management system, their enterprise excellence model that shows how everything hangs together. It's truly an example of enterprise excellence that equates to what you heard from Mark Danaher and Mr. Travis Russell of Champion X and others recently. So if you want a copy of that Baptist management system, go to the Enterprise Excellence podcast to resources and download. It'd be a great read to see how a medical industry in Baptist Memorial Health Care use this model to lead excellence every day. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence podcast, where we aim to help create a better future. Learn from our world's experts how to improve and create enduring, high-performance, low-impact enterprises. Learn how to enhance morale, customer and purpose centricity, focus and calmness. Learn how to create and sustain a culture of excellence at all levels of your organisation.
And I'm your host, Brad Jevons, coming to you from Brisbane, Australia. We are proudly brought to you in association with SA Partners, a world-leading business transformation consultancy. SA Partners are a truly purposeful company focused on helping organisations achieve sustainable improvement for themselves, others, and the planet. Welcome to episode 162 of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast. It is such a pleasure to have Mr. Skip Steward on the show with us today. Skip is the Vice President and Chief Improvement Officer of Baptist Memorial Healthcare in the US. He is the co-author of the book, Creating an Effective Management System, Integrating Policy Deployment, TWI, and Kata with Patrick Group and Brad Parson. He's also one of the hosts of the Connecting the Dots podcast, along with the physician leaders from Baptist. Let's get into the episode. Skip, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And this is fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Skip. Skip, what led Baptist Health to start down the path of forming a management system and starting to move forward towards an excellence journey?
So my boss, Dr. Paul DePriest, the Chief Operating Officer, which actually retires tomorrow, he came out of the University of Kentucky's healthcare system, and he was heavily influenced by this little manufacturing company in his backyard known as Toyota. And it was the Georgetown facility, and he got heavily influenced there. And there's that a story within itself. But back in 2012, him and I rubbed shoulders. We got to know each other and spent 6 months getting to know each other. And I remember being struck by all the books that are on my bookshelf that were on his, and thinking, wow, these are not lightweight books. And he's really into this. And he had put himself through like an 8-week Toyota University of Kentucky engineering lean training. And he was just very engaged. And so he asked me, he said, hey, would you like to cross the chasm from manufacturing and private equity where I was at to healthcare and develop an improvement system. And so I thought about that, and I ultimately said yes. And we called it the Baptist Management System, which is our improvement system. Some might call their improvement system organizational excellence or lean, and all those are great terms. There's nothing wrong with that. But we chose to use the Baptist Management System because many times when you even use the word lean, and I love lean, you have a straw man that you either have to build up or tear down, and of what people think that word means. It was just a lot easier to call it the Baptist Management System, to have a catalyst by which we would use to drive improvement for our patients.
Yeah, that's great, Skip. So you had that background in your leader who's been there and seen it through Toyota, and then you've joined on board and you've come to this place where you've called it the Baptist Management System. Skip, I love that analogy too of the straw man, because that is so true. People either don't know lean or they've been through a bad experience with a lean deployment, and there's some baggage you have to overcome. So I really credit you guys with going down the path of the Baptist Management System.
Yeah, it's been really great so far, and we're having to practice what we preach. We have to study and adjust, whether it be a pandemic or any other situation that comes along. But where I came from, I spent most of my career at Emerson Electric, and this was just the way that we managed. It wasn't something separate, and so the improvement systems and lean is still relatively new in the world of healthcare, even though there's been great work done out there by Virginia Mason and by people like John Toussaint. John and I are great friends. It's still relatively new compared to other industries. And so even though we're 10 years into the Baptist management system, 10 years this summer, in some respects, we're still in the early days. And we're going to continue to experiment our way forward.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Now, Skip, I've been fortunate to be able to see the model, and it's amazing. I really value being able to look over that. At the start of the model is mentioned that, it's a socio-technical system. Do you mind explaining the concept of socio-technical system that is at the start of your Baptist management system?
I'd love to. Thank you for even asking the question. So I can get a little nerdy here, so you may have to pull me back, Brad. But here we go. So just to unpack that, socio just means people. We deal with people, right? And technical means task, work that we do in healthcare, whether that be doing an MRI or doing some medical procedure. So you have socio, people, you have technical, task, and technology and work that you do. But here's the magic word that I don't know that everyone always understands the implication, the word system. So a system, in the very simplest definition, is a whole that cannot be separated into individual parts. It's a whole that cannot be separated into individual parts. A great example of a system is a car. The purpose of a car is to get you from point A to point B. That's what its purpose is. But no part of a car by itself can get you from point A to point B. The engine can't, the axle can't. It's only when the parts are interdependent and interacting do they bring about the property of getting you from point A to point B. The human body is even a better example of a system because it's organic and it's living. And so we have lots of subsystems in the human body, the digestive system, the circulatory system, the nervous system, and all of those subsystems are working together to bring life. So a socio-technical system, and one of my old mentors, Dr. Edgar Schein, would argue that healthcare is arguably the most complex socio-technical system on planet Earth. So we have to have people, we have to have technology, and we're working within a system. And you can see that in healthcare when a patient enters healthcare. They may, and traditionally in America, the entryway may be through the ED. And those ED professionals are very disciplined and committed to their life, but that patient may be getting handed off to radiology or a med surg or an ICU or to surgery. Well, those are different disciplines doing different tasks. But how does that patient move forward? Well, until robots are doing everything, they're still moving forward as a result of humans, as a result of people. And so the socio-technical is really important. To build on that, if we're going to work within a socio-technical system, then our improvement system must also be socio-technical, and it is. So do we do technical things in the Baptist management system like value stream mapping and Kaizen events and improvement Kata, coaching Kata, and 5S? Oh yeah, we do all of those things and many, many more. But we also have socio elements, TWI, job relations, humble inquiry. How do we work with people? Because you could be the most technologically advanced person you've ever seen, but if I don't show you respect, Brad, if you don't feel psychologically safe, if you don't feel valued, I will never be able to help you improve your area because of the social barrier that's there.
Yeah, too true. And I can see too, Skip, with it that connection between the technical and the socio, but then the element of the system. And so true with the health system. There's systems within systems and systems within systems. It's massive,
Absolutely.
isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's massive would be a good way of saying it. That's right.
Yeah. So I love the call out that the socio is a human factor, and then the technical is, of course, all the tools and techniques and processes and that side of things that play out in the model. Now, Skip, in the model, you have 3 pillars of people, process, and purpose, and 11 principles. Yeah. So do you mind exploring how these come to life within the Baptist health
Sure.
management system and how they interplay together?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I love that you just chose to use the word interplay. That's perfect. Well said. So our Baptist management system is grounded on or sitting upon 11 guiding principles. Now, let me first and foremost give credit where credit's due. They are heavily influenced by the Shingo Institute, a non-for-profit organization out of Utah State. It's been around for 30 plus years. And so if you were to go to the Shingo Institute website, if the listeners were, and you look at our principles versus theirs, you'd see tremendous similarity. But these 11 guiding principles are divided into 3 dimensions. There are people principles, there's process principles, and there's purpose principles. But those are not 11 independent principles. Those are 11 interdependent principles. And those principles, when working together, bring about the Baptist management system. But the principles are something that the Shingo Institute discovered. They didn't create them. So, for example, and they're like other principles we have in life, like gravity. Brad, you could tell me, Skip, I don't believe in gravity. And I would laugh and I'd say, no, Brad, okay, but there's going to be some consequences for not believing in that principle.
Yeah.
Same thing with these principles. So, for example, one of the Shingo principles and one of our principles is respect for every individual. You could make the argument, and the other one in the people principle is lead with humility. You could make the argument, you know what, I don't believe in respect for every individual, and I don't believe in lead with humility. And my response to you would be, okay, Brad, but there will be consequences for that. For you choosing not to believe in those principles. There's a consequence either way. But what we're really wanting to see is, how do those principles manifest themselves in behaviors? In other words, I can't see a principle, but I can see a behavior. I can see how you talk to people, how you interact with people. I can see what kind of systems encourage respect for every individual. For example, you may have a idea generation system where you work really hard to pull people's ideas because you value people. You value that they're important. You value that they're creative. Well, that system would most likely then manifest behaviors that show that I'm respecting people. I respect you so much that I desire your ideas. I desire your thoughts. I desire your opinions. But let me also make a point about them being interdependent again. So if we were to go up to the dimension of process, let's just grab one of the principles. One of the principles could be scientific thinking. There's a really easy one. That principle doesn't sit on its own. So for example, I want to do scientific thinking. That's fine, and I can see how that would manifest itself, but it's also connected to lead with humility and respect for every individual. Because if you don't feel respected by me, if you don't feel valued by me, if I don't approach you with some level of humility, I'm never going to be able to get to the scientific thinking work. That's not going to happen. So the socio and technical, think about it this way. Don't think about the socio and technical being like two sets of columns, but what might be better is a double helix. And so if I try to separate the socio and technical double helix, I then have the problem of trying to put them back together. They're interconnected. I have to connect them. They're not two columns, they're like a double helix. And so there's 11 guiding principles. Those 11 guiding principles influence in a very strong way of the subsystems and tools that we use within the Baptist management system. So, for example, we are heavily involved with the improvement Kata, coaching Kata. Strongly embrace that approach. Well, that's a manifestation of that principle of scientific thinking. It's also it could also affect other principles like quality at the source and focus on process and things of that nature. Here's another example. We are heavily involved in our strategic deployment A3 process, what some might call Hoshin. Well, that would be a manifestation of our of systemic thinking principles, And so, is that helpful the way laying that out, Brad?
Yeah. So you got the 11 principles, and they all intertwine like a web. Like they all rely on each other to truly achieve the Baptist management system and to really create that excellent system of the organization where it's healthy and going really well.
That's
Skip,
right.
With it, Skip, I wouldn't mind diving into each of the three pillars, if you don't mind, mate, and just explore those. I think for our listeners, you'll see we're not talking so much about tools and techniques today. We're talking about the whole socio-technical system that enables the tools and techniques to work. So, Skip, many of our guests have discussed the power of purpose in achieving enterprise excellence before. So I've had many people on the podcast talking about that. Can you take us through how you go about aligning the organization to purpose through systemic thinking and constancy of purpose?
Yeah, love to. So I'm gonna use our some of our Baptist management system approaches to hopefully put some meat on the bones, to use an idiom. So we have. I was mentored in my career, both in my manufacturing world and even in my healthcare world, when I joined Baptist, by a dear friend, Pascal Dennis. And Pascal, dear friend, wrote a book called Getting the Right Things Done. Highly recommend that book. And so we use an A3 process at the highest level of Baptist. And so let me go a little even higher than that. Our true north for our work, our true north that would fall maybe under our vision, is that we want to provide the right care at the right time, in the right place, at the right cost. So if you go anywhere in Baptist, you start the sentence, almost anyone in Baptist and 20,000 team members can finish that sentence. Right care, right time, right place, right cost. Right care, right time, right place, right cost. So underneath those, we'll call them themes, true north themes, we will have strategic A3s. So at the highest level at corporate, I actually personally, I have the right time one. I'm responsible for that one. And but someone will own, or some thought leader will own that A3. Now you could have more than one strategic A3. So for example, under right care, you might have one that focuses on just physician engagement, and you might have another one under right care, strategic A3, that focuses on employee satisfaction or patient satisfaction. So you could have a couple, So those strategic A3s are set up in a PDSA format. The left side is the planning section, and on the right side is the do, study, and adjust section. And there's lots of catchball. Our calendar year starts October 1, but we start back in June creating those strategic A3s based on where we're at as an organization, the things that we need to focus on. Lots of catchball. And catchball, for the listeners that may not know, is just a scrubbing process of where I'm exchanging ideas back and forth, where I might say, hey, Brad, I think this is really what we need to focus on in the perioperative process. Well, no, Skip, I think we need to focus on XYZ. Well, tell me more about that. And so we're scrubbing those ideas. We're exchanging those. So it's catch ball, not catch anvil, I like to jokingly say.
Yeah.
And so that's at the highest level. Then that A3 will then align itself to the various entities. So right now, as of today, we have 22 hospitals, 200 clinics, a university, and some other things. And so at each entity, they also have those themes of right care, right time, right place, right cost. And they have strategic A3 at their entity level, and they're trying to do the same thing, but those A3s really need to line up with our corporate A3s. That's easier said than done, but we work hard to try to do that. And then at that entity, they could have the same A3 format, but instead of calling it strategic, we would call it tactical, because it would be at a department level. So within an entity, the only difference between a strategic and tactical A3 is at what level is it at. So you may have multiple departments feeding in to a particular strategic A3 at an entity level. Now, underneath that tactical A3, there may be other work that's going on to feed into that. So let me back up a little bit. So at the very highest level at corporate, we're going to review our strategic A3s. They're going to eventually evolve into something called a status A3, which basically means we're at the point of studying and adjusting. That's about a month and a half to 2 months into the year. And so we're studying and adjusting because of what we thought was true, and what actually true is many times different. Then at the entity level, they're going to have their strategic A3s. They might be reviewing them once a month. And then the department level, they might be reviewing those once a week, But then even underneath those department A3s, they may be doing something very specific, like they may be using some TWI job instructions based on something they determined in their department, or they may be using Kata, or they may be using some other improvement, very targeted effort. But ultimately, what we're trying to accomplish is to make sure that the work that's going on at the front level with that nurse or that discipline practitioner is aligned ultimately at the highest level of corporate, so that we're all pulling in a very similar way. We have other tools and techniques that help encourage that, some electronic tools to where our cascading of goals. But, we're working really hard to make sure that we're pulling in a similar direction. As a Shingo examiner, I can tell you that I've been in some of the largest organizations and most impressive organizations in the world. And I have seen good leaders with good initiatives that are not connected to what's going on the front level. And that's not because the leader's bad. It's because somewhere the ball got dropped when the deployment and the alignment didn't occur. That somehow aligning and deploying is very, very difficult. And so we're constantly trying to get better at that, because the last thing that we want is improving for the sake of improving. That's not what we want. We want improving that's aligned to our strategic initiatives of the organization. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's a really powerful description. I can see that you've got your true north, and then you've got your top level A3s that then cascade down where you've got your mid-level A3s, and then it can go right the way down to really frontline. They become more tactical and granular as you go down. But ultimately what you're saying, it ultimately creates that, systemic thinking and alignment and that constancy of energy then towards what's most important. But but Skip, what you're saying is that the system is very important to create that. You can have the best plan at the top, but without that alignment system, it can be very hard to achieve.
You have to have the alignment system. And even that system itself has to be PDSA, plan, do, study, adjust. And so we're doing that. We took a significant step this summer at the corporate level, in my opinion, to take a strong step forward at improving that process. And something I also want to mention, because it could very easily go unnoticed, the Baptist management system has to also be PDSA'd. So I have to practice what I preach. I have to make sure, are we continually improving our process? Or are we getting better? Are we better than we were a year ago?
Yeah, that's powerful, Skip. And I think that review and adjust, especially in planning, can sometimes be missed, can't it? It can be, we lock in a plan at the start of the year and we just try to plow through on that plan.
That's right.
But I think that the fog of war, like you've got a plan, but as soon as the first bomb goes off, the plan needs to potentially adjust. And
that's right.
I think myself, Skip, I see a lot of organizations where they don't do that monthly review and adjust the PDSA on their plans, and the plans end up just getting thrown aside because I think they find it too hard. It's like, get disgruntled.
Well, and there's
it's
another
not going to
piece
happen.
of that. Look, there's another piece of that too, Brad. If you look at that principle of constancy of purpose, which most people will recognize that connected to the late Dr. W. Edwards Deming, is sometimes people set themselves up for failure. So I was talking to an executive in our system recently about this effort that we were encouraging them to consider. And he was so transparent. He said, Skip, I've tried that effort 4 different times and I have failed every time. And I said, well, let's talk about that. And we have a great friendship. And he, in the middle of the conversation, he came to the realization that, to use a habit analogy, he said, I think what's happened is on all 4 analogies, I've tried to run a marathon, and all you've asked me to do is simply put my tennis shoes on and walk out to the mailbox. Yeah. And many times, there's all different ways to make that analogy. We try to eat the elephant all in one bite, right? And so we struggle with constancy of purpose. We keep something going on for a week, a month, 2 months, and then it falls off. But if it's really important, how can we set it up so that hell or high water, this activity, this meeting, this whatever it is, right, is going to occur? So for example, we have a patient flow discharge meeting that we have at our largest facility. It happens 7 days a week. You mean on the week? Yes, 7 days a week. But that meeting was set up to be done in 30 minutes or less. Right now it's tracking at 28 minutes. Now to get it to 28 minutes, a lot of PDSAing had to occur so that we were very concise. We had an agenda. People showed up to the meeting with what they needed to show up with. But that meeting is very valuable. We also said we said who was going to lead the meeting. We said a backup for that leader. We said a backup for that leader. I've noticed 12 different people leading that meeting. I've noticed that they all lead it exactly the same, so that now when life occurs, people's kids get sick, people go on vacation, or you fill in the blank, that's okay. Someone else can jump in and lead that meeting because it's not acceptable not to have that particular meeting.
Yeah, that's powerful. You've built in the robustness of the system to enable it to constantly continue on into the future. Right. Well, Skip, I really appreciate the time and knowledge so far, and I'm thinking we'll call it an end to this episode and come back again and continue on the conversation to talk on people and process. Thanks, Skip.
Thank you.
What a great episode. Remember, you can go to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast website to resources and download the Baptist Management System. That'll give you a great example of an Enterprise Excellence approach and model that gets led every day within Baptist Health to truly help the organisation achieve excellence. Thanks again for your time and knowledge, Skip. Thanks for helping us create a better future in such an important industry. You're a champion, mate. Bye for now.